Welcome in, folks. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming. We are live here on Twitch, recording because I appreciate all your patience over the past weekend. I was not feeling 100%. I was not able to get out these videos, but we are recording them while we are live right now. So we're doing this in one take to talk about the new season pass coming to Marvel Snap, Hope Summers. So let's dive into what she's going to do specifically for Marvel Snap and how you are most likely going to be able to take advantage of her. She is a 3/4. After you play a card here, you get +1 energy next turn. So, yes, ramp. Okay, we understand the ramp aspect of her. Getting extra energy is always good. Now, on the other end of this, though, this does have a little bit of a rescue feel, and I do want to talk about that. I do want to bring that up because I don't think it's being talked about enough. Hope Summers is a great card and is a great ramp card. However, similar to how you think about Rescue and similar to how you think about Psylocke, you know, and you're forecasting to your opponent, hey, this is what's going to happen. I am going to go here, or I am going to do a 6 on this turn. For example, you play Hope Summers with a Wasp on the same turn, similar to how you would think about it with Lockjaw previously. You know, okay, they are probably putting down some kind of important 5-cost card during this turn, and it is something that your opponent will probably have to think about because it is forecasted. So be weary of how you play Hope Summers when you're looking at ramping out certain amounts of mana, because it's not going to be as easy as you think. It is going to be probably even easier because you just have to play a card there. You just have to put a card here and you get next turn that +1 energy, which is wild when it comes to a ramp aspect, because you look at a card like Electro, which is giving +1 energy, but you can play that singular card anywhere. So I'm not sure the difference case of the plus advantage on certain ramp decks for Electro versus Hope Summers. And Hope Summers is a 3/4 versus a 3/2. So you're able to push priority even a little bit differently. The thing that is most unique about Hope Summers to me is that, in my opinion, this is a different kind of mana cheat, like we would think about Lockjaw, where Lockjaw, you would toss in a card to get out a big card. Now, you're just playing whatever card you want onto that lane to get out the big card you want. So because of that timing and synergy, Hope Summers, in my opinion, is probably going to be one of the best season pass cards we have seen in a while, probably since Loki on his original release. So when it comes to, first and foremost, should you get Hope Summers? Yes, not just because she's the season pass card, as we talk about every season. The value of the season pass for $10 is always going to be worth it. Always, always, always going to be worth it. And there are great cards coming up this season that will also synergize with her. So do yourself a favor, take some of the decks that we're going to talk about right here. Think about the advantages of that free integrated Psylocke based on location proximity of how you play out and drop cards with Hope Summers. So here's an example of one, right? This is hit Summers Bast. This is playing into the whole Bishop hit monkey style of deck with Hope Summers. And what you're able to do here is bounce regularly there. And I'm not putting in Kitty Pryde, and I'll tell you why. Kitty Pryde is going to be an organic synergy. Yes, absolutely. People are going to think about Kitty Pryde for Hope Summers. However, I do not think personally that it is the #1 synergy to be looking at when looking at bounce of any kind. Because yes, you could play a Kitty Pryde there, but what's the advantage of playing the Kitty Pryde there? You gain the +1 power for the next turn to play Kitty Pryde on there again. I don't get that. That's not a lot of power by the time you get to play Kitty Pryde on turn 4 if you did that regularly all the way through the end of the game. That's not enough to justify her. I think there are better ways to take advantage of it. So when you look at a kit like a Hitmonkey kit and a Bishop kit, you can take the sacrifice of Bast. Take last season's season pass, Black Swan, cheapen everything down because there's only 3 cards you need to actually bounce here. I only have 3 1-cost cards. It's all you actually truly need because Hitmonkey provides a world of power just with a couple of little extra pieces. So a lower cost like this, about getting that Grandmaster specifically to drop down, move over a Hitmonkey that you could play earlier on and reactivate it twice, That is how this deck scales in its power, and I like the idea of Bast being a very integral piece with Hope Summers style decks to have that bouncing go on through. So that's the hit Summers Bast. Moving into Zoo Swarm Up. No, it doesn't have Swarm, but hear me out here. Because of how easy it's going to be to get extra mana, we can then sacrifice some of the mana that we were going to get. So we can actually take advantage of Havoc in earlier turns if you were one of those brave souls that also unlocked Havoc early like I did. I took Havoc, I threw Havoc into a Zoo deck that has very tall power from turn 4 on, because you have your Cull Obsidian on there. You have your Havoc on there that you could even drop on turn 4 while then bouncing on top of the Hope Summers. That's going to be a 2/12 Havoc. I love the idea of that without having the sacrifice of where that power is, because you just have to play one card onto the Hope Summers lane, gain an extra energy back, and you continue like nothing happened. So I think playing into Zoo makes a lot of sense here. And these are tall Zoo cards, right? This is where our Kitty Pryde makes a lot more sense, because we don't have to go with the Havoc line. Then if we need to go during down the Kitty Pryde line, now we're just getting everybody into the pool. Ant-Man, of course, now with his extra buff is incredibly important here. And then the other tall aspects, and I like Nebula specifically as an earlier play because she's very defensive. Nebula focuses a lot of energy from your opponent to say, I need to control the Nebula, and more often than not, they put more resources into that lane than they were originally contemplating. So I like thinking about Nebula as a let me throw this off into the third lane type location style of deck, and then worry about my other two, because they're thinking about Nebula and you're thinking about everything else. Yes, and they're even talking about it here during the live stream that Killmonger is a bit scary here, but that's every Zoo deck. You could go ahead and take out Black Swan and put in Kyera if you want. I just really like the idea of free cards taking advantage of this cheat, specifically because I'm putting Havoc into the Zoo Swarm Up. Look, it's a 3-cost card. You're going to have Silver Surfer come up in the conversation. And I think that this is finally the moment that Silver Surfer gets to do two things. Number one, this is finally the moment that I think Silver Surfer gets to cut Sarah, which is a huge deal, in my opinion. Absolutely huge deal. Number two, this is the moment where we actually get to look at Jean Grey as a positive thing for our deck, because I've played Jean Surfer combinations and they always feel a little bit clunky because you're short on that turn 5 where you play down the Sarah into that lane. Now we can go about it completely differently, because playing Jean Grey into the Hope Summers lane is a double winning situation. You are controlling your opponent while forcing a location that you have to play into anyway. So why not get the extra energy? Because if you get that extra energy on turn 4, you can then play 2 3-cost cards on turn 5 into 2 3-cost cards on turn 6. What that equates to is Sarah no longer being needed, because the whole point of Sarah was to play 3 cards on turn 6. You're playing all of those cards now on the right and proper curve, but for more power. So I'm not putting in Wong yet. I'm not putting in Absorbing Man yet. I'm not even putting in Magic yet. I'm playing a control aspect with Storm. Let this be a 6-turn play. Keep everybody cheap. Explode everything using the Nova. Get the reinforcement of Nakia and Sebastian Shaw. And I think that this style of Surfer is going to be incredibly valuable. And there are a bunch of different 3-cost cards that you could throw into this. This is what I'm going to be starting with, and then decide from there which variations do I want to go with. But I really love the strength of Storm Juggernaut in case if you don't get everything to work out perfectly. So that's one of my opening lines that I kind of want to feed into a little bit more so for the Silver Summers. Hopefully Thanos works. I'm changing my idea and mindset on Thanos. So here's the thing. Nobody likes Lockjaw and Thanos right now. I was even talking about it in today's stream earlier. Nobody likes the idea of Lockjaw and Thanos anymore. But that's because we hate the idea of 5-cost cards not having the true benefit to them. So what if we went really all in on that mindset? We put Black Swan in here as a card to help get that Lockjaw plus Stone on turn 4. We also then say 5-cost cards are completely gone. let's nix the 5-cost cards and play into the idea that if you don't have a 5-cost card, that's okay. Protect your 6s with Kyera, or you can then also look at Hope Summers even as late as turn 4 or even turn 5 to be a standard 4-power card. This is where I think that we have some potential to ramp out some power, because even Hope Summers with a Lockjaw on top of it is a great synergy for turns 3 and 4, because then when you toss a card into Lockjaw, you're also getting that basically built-in time stone for both of those turns. And I liked that potential play. So let's put her into that style of deck. You can take out Black Swan out of this, but again, as you see, there's a reason that I'm doing that. There's a reason that Black Swan makes Hope Summers' synergy so much more powerful. The idea of playing that extra energy for free and cheapening it repeatedly is something that this style of card is going to invite you to do more often. So I think we should lean more into that, even in the world where Mobius M. Mobius exists. We should be leaning into that because Hope Summers gives you a higher ceiling of mana to work with, and Mobius can't dance around that, but you're giving yourself both options to figure out which way you want to go with it. Mooning Glenn in Summer is taking Glenn Jones's Moon Girl deck with Thor and Jane Foster and now capitalizing on some extra energy on top of it. So we've thrown those together to say that Jane Foster in particular is going to give us all of those hammers when we need them and how we need them. But we could also potentially ramp things out with more power because we are now using the Kitty Pryde in here, because we are now using that on turn 5, potentially by having that Hope Summers drop on 4, then play Jane Foster on top of it on turn 5, and now you have 7 energy to ramp on turn 6. This is where I think we start seeing little integrations where Hope Summers doesn't need to necessarily be a card that you get 2, 3, or 4 energy out of because you're constantly playing on it and then moving off, right? It is an option of how to play her, but I don't see it as necessary. I see Hope Summers as a card that in a deck like this, all you really need is 1 turn of extra energy, and that can add so much value like a Hitmonkey deck, where 1 extra piece of energy is 2 more power on a card. And that brings her value in a deck like this from 3-4 to 3-6, which is just straight up good stats. So that's how I'm looking at it, especially when you can put her into something that will look towards ramp, which is the main thing that most people will look towards. They're going to see ramp, they're going to want to take advantage of that, right? So let's take advantage of it. Let's take a look at how we can do Hela as a rampable style deck, but now even better. What does Hope Summers do for that? Hope Summers does exactly what you wanted Crystal to do, but backwards. Crystal wanted you to have a better chance to get that card draw, right? You wanted the extra chance. Magic's going to allow you to do that anyway. But Hope Summers is going to allow you a secondary play line to work with just in case. It's going to be easier to do the backup plan of Iron Man, Onslaught, Living Tribunal stacking into this style of deck versus Crystal, which is kind of leaning a little bit more heavily into the MODOK Hope into Hela line that you're trying to build. So Hope Summers, the way I'm going to look at her in this deck is I'm going to have a stronger backup plan at the sacrifice of the amount of times I'm going to successfully get MODOK into Hela. And Supergiant also allows us to play Hope Summers into Supergiant, followed by Hela on turn 5, MODOK on turn 6. That's the combination that I think is the hidden little beast in here, because you could already have it, but maybe you didn't draw that Infinite that you were banking on, or you didn't draw that Giganto, those big pieces that you were banking on. That's the order play in here, that if you don't have the magic line, you can go ahead and protect yourself with Hope into Supergiant. Then that one piece is all you need to get your Hela into MODOK on 5, then 6. So that's the type of ramping I see here outside of what we'll just call a pretty classic ramp. You're going to put her with your ramp cards. You're going to play her with Storm. You're going to play her with Psylocke. You're going to play those style of cards and then have fun with it, because Sandman's an incredibly strong archetype and will continue to be a strong archetype in this season, because a lot of people will have extra energy to work with, they're going to want to ramp out those cards. And if Sandman can specifically restrict your turn 6, I like that. So restrict that turn 6 from having your other cards be a little bit more, a little bit less resourceful, and play into your very simple ramp lines. Yes, we're putting an Orca in here because it's an easy 16 power lane if you don't go the Doctor Doom way. Yes, you have Black Panther into Zola. Yes, you have your Doctor Doom into Odin. And Arrow is incredibly still underrated in Sandman decks. So I'm going to remind you of her by playing her here, because with Jeff the Baby Landshark, you now also have that turn 6 combo potential if you absolutely need to, by playing on the Hope Summers on turn 5, followed by Black Panther and Jeff, or Arrow and Jeff on turn 6, because you'll have 7 mana to work with, and Jeff gets around that. So I like how ramp is going to naturally, organically fill what Hope Summers wants to do, considering that the biggest variation you're probably going to see, and I apologize for the season start, is you're probably going to see cards like Galactus, right? You're going to see these Galactus decks because it just makes so much more sense to play Hope Summers versus Electro here. It just does. You're already stacking into one lane, so why be restricted in case if you need a secondary game plan with your Jeff for that reason? So we're taking out Electro from a standard Galactus deck. We're ramping in that Hope Summers in case, and then in turn 6, if you get your combo to pop off, you get that Galactus to ramp out on turn 5, you don't need 2 cards on turn 6. You don't need that extra energy that Electro was going to give you anywho. Go ahead and play your Goliath and call it a day. So I like this for a Galactus build, and is probably one of the most consistent use cases in theory crafting when it comes to Hope Summers. I hope that that gives you some insight in regards to what I think Hope Summers is going to do, not just as a ramp card, but also as a generic card in some very key archetypes, like Silver Surfer, like Bounce. We're going to see crazy synergies, and I do believe that Hope Summers is going to be one of the strongest cards for a season pass to come to Marvel Snap in quite some time. I do think she's worth your resources. I do think she's worth investing in, and again, not just because she's the season pass, but because she is a very good card that has energy organically built into her. So thank you. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoy this, take a look at what we have to say about Pixie, because Pixie, oh man, she's going to be a crazy card. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.